It's not just about getting the questions right, you've got to get them right under test day conditions. Back when I was studying for the LSAT, I wondered why my practice test scores were so low when, upon review, I was getting the questions right and understood them thoroughly. And the secret I found came down to the timing of the LSAT as well as the endurance factor. For those who don't know me, my name is Steve Schwartz. I've been teaching the LSAT since 2005, and I personally increased my own LSAT score from a 152 to a 175. And now, when I craft LSAT study plans for my students, I group them into three major phases: accuracy, pacing, and endurance. The accuracy phase is where a lot of students focus, especially when they're drilling question by question, maybe working on a particular logical reasoning question type. The thing is that on LSAT test day itself, you're not doing just one question here, one question there, untimed. You're doing the questions in the context of a full section of 25 or 26 logical reasoning questions. And then, of course, pulling it all together in a full length practice test with four timed sections in one sitting with just a single 10-minute break between sections 2 and 3. And so, if you're finding your accuracy is great, but your practice test results are not that good, what I'm going to recommend is that in order for you to reach that next level and get a top LSAT score, you work on your pacing, then you work on your endurance. So pacing in logical reasoning, for example, requires that you understand the order of difficulty within the section, meaning you're looking at the questions in the context of the full logical reasoning section. The questions are in a general order of difficulty, meaning they get harder as the section goes on. The first 10 questions are relatively easier, meaning you want to get through them faster than average so that you have a time bank built up to tackle the tougher questions that are going to actually need that additional time. So with standard timing, I recommend doing the first 10 questions in roughly 10 to 12 minutes. If you're aiming for a 165 plus LSAT score, then you can slow it down for the tougher questions. Maybe you're flagging 3, 4, maybe even 5 of those toughest questions to come back to later. I typically find that the toughest questions are within questions numbered 15 through 23 within the logical reasoning section. Then the last couple might be a little bit easier, maybe to punish the students who aren't pacing themselves and aren't even going to reach the end. Now, I mentioned flagging questions to skip and come back to later. This is a huge and often overlooked strategy, underutilized strategy. Personally, I'll flag 3 or 4 questions in a single section of logical reasoning just because I don't want to deal with them in the moment. And why should I when every question is worth the same? You don't get more points for harder questions, and I don't see any reason to risk getting bogged down or stuck on any one question since they're all worth the same, and I'm aiming to move at a fast enough pace that I can trust I'll be able to come back to that tough question later with the security of knowing that I've already completed the section. Now, this requires being able to quickly identify and evaluate the questions that are the best candidates for skipping, the ones that I don't want to deal with in the moment. So for me, these questions might include overly technical science, logical reasoning questions. They might include more abstract moral philosophy related questions. They might be lengthier parallel reasoning questions. For example, none of these factors alone would be sufficient to guarantee I'm going to exclude that question on my first pass through the section, but it indicates they're pretty good candidates that I would likely want to skip and come back to later. For me, the test is simply knowing I don't want to deal with this question in the moment because it doesn't seem that easy to me at a first glance. It seems like it might require a little more puzzling over it for an additional minute or two that I just don't want to spend the time on right now at that moment. The online LSAT has a really handy flagging feature, meaning you can click a little flag icon and you'll be able to later see at a glance which questions you flagged for later re-evaluation. And then you come back to it at the end of the section with the security of knowing that you've already reached the end. Ideally, you have at least 3-5 minutes left to come back and tackle those tougher questions you flagged earlier. And with a second look, a fresh perspective, you may be able to break out of your earlier tunnel vision and turn that into a right answer. Now, on reading comp, of course, it works a little bit differently because the questions are grouped to be associated with each individual passage. And so I wouldn't want to flag question 6 from passage 1 and then come back to it after having completed passage 4, because I'll then have to refamiliarize myself with the content of passage number 1 when I've already been reading all this other stuff in the meantime. And so I would aim to just approach the reading comp questions within a passage set based on which type of question they are. I like to solve the general global questions first. These are your main idea, primary purpose, passage organization, best title, tone, author's opinion. Knock those out first, lay the groundwork, then do the detail-oriented questions that require going back to the passage, or at least prompt you to go back to the passage text for specific lines supporting a given choice, and then save the more inferential questions, the ones that require a bit more reading between the lines, for last. So within a set of 7 questions for one passage, maybe 2 of them are of one type, 3 are of another type, and another 2 are of yet another type of those 3 categories I mentioned: global, local, and inferential. I'm doing all 7 or so of those before moving on to the next passage text and reading that next passage text to solve the next 7 or so questions. Idea being here, once again, how you allocate your time, how you pace yourself, what you choose to focus on at any given moment is going to make a big difference in how you perform in the context of an actual timed LSAT, which of course is what it's really all about. If you'd like my help navigating your LSAT prep journey on your path to a top score, there are a wide variety of ways that I could help you out. Check out the links below to find out more and to book a call with me and my team. We'd be glad to help you out. And in the meantime, I wish you all the best and take care.